Mom lied her birthday was for adults. Only then I saw my brother's kids, sitting at her table. I thought it was just a regular birthday party until I realized my kids were the only ones left out. My mother lied, saying it was an adults-only event, while my brother's kids sat at her table, laughing, celebrating, like they belonged. My heart shattered, but that night I made a choice that changed everything, not just for my children, but for me. And trust me, she never saw it coming. Want to know how I turned my family's rejection into a victory they never expected? Stay with me. You won't believe what happened next. I sat in my car outside my mother's house, gripping the invitation in my hand. My stomach twisted with unease, but I tried to ignore it. This was supposed to be a happy occasion. My mom, Margaret Benson, was turning 60, and she had planned an elegant birthday dinner at one of Philadelphia's finest restaurants. A grand affair, she had called it. A night for close family and friends to celebrate her milestone. I should have been excited. But instead, all I could think about was the phone call I'd had with her 2 weeks ago. "Sweetheart, this is an adults-only event," she had said, her voice laced with that false sweetness she used when she was trying to make something sound reasonable. "I just want a sophisticated evening, you know? No kids running around, no distractions." I had hesitated. "So Ava and Liam can't come?" A brief pause. "It's just better this way, honey. You understand, don't you?" At the time, I had forced myself to smile through the disappointment, to push away the nagging feeling that something was off. "Of course, Mom. I understand." But now, sitting here in my car, staring at the glowing windows of her house, I wasn't so sure. Ava and Liam had been devastated when I told them they couldn't come, but it's Grammy's birthday. Liam had cried, his 6-year-old face scrunched up in confusion. "She always lets us come to her parties." "I know, baby," I had said, smoothing his hair. "But this time, Grammy just wants a quiet dinner." Ava, my thoughtful 8-year-old, had folded her arms, frowning. "Then why is Uncle Michael bringing his kids?" I had blinked at her, my heart sinking. "What?" Michael said on the phone that he got special outfits for Ethan, Sophia, and Miles. He said, "Grammy picked them out herself." I had tried to hide my reaction, but I couldn't stop the cold wave of realization from washing over me. My mother had lied to me. She had told me no children were allowed, but she had only meant my children. Now, as I stepped out of my car and walked up to the restaurant, I clutched my purse a little tighter. I wasn't here to make a scene. I wasn't here to ruin my mother's party. But I needed to see it for myself. I needed to know if what Ava had said was true. Inside, the restaurant was stunning dim lighting, elegant chandeliers, waiters in crisp black and white uniforms gliding between tables with trays of wine and delicate hors d'oeuvre. A long banquet table was set in the center of the room, adorned with candles and lavish floral arrangements. My mother sat at the head of the table laughing as my brother Michael whispered something in her ear. And there, right next to them, were 3 small figures in dress clothes. My stomach dropped. Ethan, Sophia, and Miles, Michael's children, sat comfortably among the adults, sipping sparkling cider from crystal glasses, their faces glowing under the candlelight. The empty seats where my children should have been felt like a slap in the face. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Mom," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I thought this was an adults-only event?" My mother turned, her smile faltering for just a second before she quickly recovered. "Oh, sweetheart, you made it." She reached for my hands, squeezing them like nothing was wrong. "You look beautiful. Come sit." I didn't move. "You told me kids weren't allowed." Her expression flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Annoyance? Then she waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, honey, Michael's kids are different." I stared at her, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Different how?" Michael, ever the golden child, leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Come on, sis. You know your kids can be a bit of a handful." A handful. That's what they thought of Ava and Liam. That's why my children weren't invited. Because Ava was quiet and observant. Because she sometimes needed time to warm up in social settings. Because Liam was energetic, full of life, always moving, always exploring, and that apparently wasn't good enough for my mother. I swallowed the lump in my throat, scanning the table. The family portraits on the wall of the private dining room suddenly felt suffocating, so perfectly curated, with my brother's children at the center, while mine were always off to the side, always in the background. I had made excuses for this kind of treatment before. I had told myself it wasn't intentional, that maybe I was overreacting. But this was deliberate. I glanced at my mother, at Michael, at the people I had spent my whole life trying to please, trying to be good enough for. I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't going to let my children feel this way. I wasn't going to let them grow up thinking they were less than just because they didn't fit into my mother's perfect little mold. I took a slow breath, straightened my shoulders, and picked up my purse. "Where are you going?" my mother asked, her brow furrowing. I met her gaze, my voice unwavering. "To be with the people who actually want me there." And with that, I turned and walked out. As I stepped into the cool night air, I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Ryan Cole, a renowned chef, an old friend, and the owner of one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. I pressed call. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Cassie? Wow, it's been forever. What's up?" I closed my eyes for a second, exhaling. Then I smiled. "Ryan, do you have any room at your restaurant tonight? I need to show my kids what real family looks like." I sat in my car outside the restaurant, my fingers gripping the steering wheel as my heart pounded against my ribs. The echoes of my mother's voice, my brother's smirk, and the sight of my niece and nephews sitting comfortably at that lavish table played in my mind on repeat. My hands trembled as I exhaled, trying to steady myself. I had spent years brushing off the subtle slights, the dismissive comments, the way my mother always seemed to put Michael's family on a pedestal while mine was treated like an afterthought. But tonight had shattered any illusions I had left. I stared at my phone screen, Ryan's name still highlighted from our last call. He had answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar despite the years. "Cassie!" "Wow, it's been forever. What's up?" I had swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile into my voice. "Ryan, do you have any room at your restaurant tonight? I need to show my kids what real family looks like." He hadn't hesitated. "Bring them over. I'll take care of everything." Now, as I shifted my car into drive, I felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over me. My children were home, still dressed in the outfits they had picked out for a party. They weren't allowed to attend, still hurt from being told they weren't special enough to be part of Grammy's big night. They deserved more. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw them through the front window, sitting at the kitchen table with Jessica, our babysitter. They weren't playing, weren't talking, just sitting there, their little faces somber. Ava had her chin resting on her hands, while Liam absent-mindedly poked at a board game piece with his finger. I stepped inside, my heart clenching at their disappointment. Jessica glanced up from her book, offering me a small smile. "Hey, you're home early," she said softly. Liam perked up immediately, his wide brown eyes hopeful. "Mom, did Grammy change her mind?" That simple question nearly broke me. I crouched down in front of him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "No, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "But you know what? That's okay, because we're going somewhere even better." Ava lifted her head, suspicious. "Better than Grammy's party?" I grinned and pulled out my phone, showing them a video. It was Ryan's restaurant, Cole's Bistro, a gorgeous, high-end dining experience that had been featured on several foodie blogs and TV segments. The video played footage of Ryan himself plating a delicate dish, the kind of thing you'd only see in five-star restaurants. "Wait," Ava whispered, her eyes widening. "That's where we're going?" Liam gasped. "No way. That's the place from YouTube. The one with the chocolate volcano cake. That's the one," I said, ruffling his hair. "And guess what? You're not just eating there. You're going to be special guests in the kitchen." Their reactions were immediate. Liam practically launched himself into the air, bouncing excitedly. Ava's face lit up in a way that made my heart ache because I realized this was what she had been hoping for all night. Not just a fancy dinner, not just a fun experience, but to feel included, to feel wanted. "Get your coats," I said, smiling. "We're leaving in 5 minutes." By the time we arrived at Cole's Bistro, the restaurant was bustling. Through the large glass windows, we could see the warm glow of candlelit tables, the sleek modern decor, and the hum of conversation from well-dressed patrons enjoying their meals. But when we stepped inside, everything changed. A man in a crisp black suit approached us immediately. "Good evening, Miss Benson. Right this way." Ava's hand tightened in mine. "They know our name?" she whispered. I squeezed her fingers. "Of course they do. You're VIPs tonight." The host led us not to a dining table, but straight into the kitchen. Ryan was there in his chef's whites, grinning ear to ear. "The stars of the evening have arrived," he announced, his voice booming over the sound of sizzling pans and clinking dishes. Liam's jaw practically hit the floor. "Whoa, this is amazing." Ryan knelt down to their level. "Tell me something, do you guys know how to cook?" "I make the best scrambled eggs ever," Liam said proudly. Ava hesitated, then glanced at me for reassurance. "I've been learning about baking," she said. "I like making different flavors of frosting." Ryan's eyes lit up. "Well, then you're exactly who we need. How about you both help me create a brand new dessert for tonight's menu?" They gasped in unison. "Really?" Ava asked, eyes shining. "Really," Ryan confirmed. "But first, you need to look the part." He signaled to a staff member who brought out 2 miniature chef's coats and hats. The kids practically vibrated with excitement as they put them on, looking up at themselves in the stainless steel reflections of the professional kitchen. For the next hour, they weren't just kids who had been left out of a party, they were part of something special. They helped whisk chocolate ganache, taste test different ingredients, and plate a beautiful dessert with fresh berries and edible gold flakes. Liam, who usually couldn't sit still for long, was completely focused, hanging on to Ryan's every instruction. Ava, usually shy in new environments, glowed with confidence, taking notes in the small recipe journal she had brought with her. As they finished the final plating, Ryan turned to them with a proud smile. "I think we have a masterpiece. What should we call it?" Ava and Liam exchanged a look. Then, in perfect unison, they said, "The Benson Special." Ryan clapped his hands. "I love it. Let's make it official." He signaled to a waiter, who rushed to print a brand new menu insert. And when it came back, right there in elegant script was the Benson Special, created by our junior chefs, Ava and Liam. Tears burned in my eyes as I watched them beam with pride. This was what my children deserved, to be seen, to be celebrated, to be included. And the best part? The restaurant's social media manager had been filming the entire thing. As we sat down for our special dinner VIP seating, with a full-course meal prepared just for us, Ryan's team uploaded a photo of Ava and Liam holding their dessert, chef hat slightly askew, grinning from ear to ear. The caption? "Tonight's junior chefs at Cole's Bistro, Ava and Liam Benson, the brilliant minds behind our newest dessert, the Benson Special." We love seeing young talent shine in our kitchen. Within minutes, the post was going viral, and back at my mother's party, people were starting to notice. So there I was, standing in the middle of a restaurant, reading a text that changed everything. My mother wasn't just trying to cover up her lie, she was claiming my kids, acting like she had been their biggest supporter all along. And if that wasn't bad enough, my brother was furious too, because for once, his kids weren't the center of attention. But here's the question. Should I confront her directly and expose the truth in front of the whole family? Or should I let karma do the work for me? What would you do? Comment 1 for confrontation, 2 for karma. I watched as Ava and Liam dug into their dessert, their laughter filling the space between us. The dim lighting of the restaurant cast a warm glow over the table, making this moment feel even more surreal. An hour ago, my kids had been heartbroken, feeling excluded from a celebration that should have been for everyone. Now they were sitting in one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, eating a dessert they had created, their names printed on the menu like real chefs. And I wasn't just happy for them, I was proud. I glanced down at my phone, where the restaurant's social media post was already gaining traction. The comments were coming in fast. Look at these two. The Benson special looks delicious. This is incredible. What a way to encourage kids to love cooking. Ava and Liam, the future of fine dining. Can we order this next time we visit? I smiled to myself. But before I could put my phone away, a new notification popped up. A text message from my cousin, Sarah. Hey, just saw something interesting on Facebook. Are Ava and Liam really at Cole's Bistro? I raised an eyebrow, quickly opening my Facebook app. My stomach flipped. Someone had shared the restaurant's post, but not just anyone, my mother. I clicked on her profile, and there it was. My mother had reshared the post with a caption that made my blood boil. So proud of my brilliant grandkids. Looks like they're making magic in the kitchen tonight. I nearly dropped my phone. I inhaled deeply, trying to suppress the wave of anger rushing through me. Proud? Now she was proud? Now that my children were getting attention, she was acting like she had supported them all along? I clenched my jaw. She hadn't even invited them to her birthday. She had looked me in the eye and told me they weren't suited for the event. But now that the internet was celebrating them, suddenly she was claiming them. I forced myself to stay calm, not wanting to ruin this perfect night for my kids. But before I could decide what to do, my phone buzzed again. Sarah again. Michael just saw the post too. Mom's pretending like she's been supporting Ava and Liam this whole time. And now, Michael's pissed. He's saying Grammy is making his kids look bad. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, this was rich. Michael, my golden child brother, was angry because, for the first time ever, his kids weren't the center of attention. The irony was almost too much to process. I looked up to see Ryan approaching our table, his brow furrowed slightly. Hey, he said, voice low. Did you see the post? I nodded. Oh, I saw it. He hesitated. Look, I know this was supposed to be a night about you and the kids, but something's happening. I tilted my head. What do you mean? Ryan pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward me. It was open to the restaurant's Instagram notifications, hundreds of likes, comments, and messages. People are calling in reservations just to try the Benson special, he said. But that's not the crazy part. He scrolled down and my breath caught. Local news stations were reaching out. Food bloggers were asking if Ava and Liam could do a live demo. Even a morning show producer had messaged, wanting to feature them. I stared at the screen, speechless. My kids had walked into this restaurant, feeling like they didn't belong anywhere. And now? Now the world was recognizing their talent in a way my own mother never had. I should have felt triumphant. I should have been overjoyed. Instead, all I could think about was how my mother would spin this to her advantage. Ryan must have noticed the shift in my expression because he pulled out the chair next to me and sat down. Talk to me. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. My mom just reshared your post. She's acting like she's always been Ava and Liam's biggest supporter, Ryan grimaced. Of course she is. And now Michael's mad because, for once, it's not his kids getting all the attention. Ryan let out a low whistle. Wow. The drama practically writes itself. I scoffed. Yeah, except it's my life. I looked over at Ava and Liam, still oblivious to the chaos unfolding outside this restaurant. They were happy, truly happy, and I refused to let my mother or my brother taint this moment for them. I straightened my shoulders. I need to control the narrative before she does. Ryan's lips curled into a knowing smirk. Now that sounds like the Cassie I remember. I grabbed my phone, took a deep breath, and started typing. If my mother wanted to act like she had always been their biggest fan, then fine. But I was going to make sure the truth was out there. I tapped out a new post and hit publish before I could overthink it. Some moments in life remind you exactly where you belong. Tonight, Ava and Liam weren't just included, they were celebrated. They didn't have to fight for a seat at the table. They were given one, with their names printed right on the menu. This is what real family looks like. I attached a photo of Ava and Liam, still in their tiny chef's jackets, standing proudly beside their dessert. Ryan peeked over my shoulder, nodding in approval. That's perfect. Within seconds, the likes and comments started rolling in. But the best part? Other family members were responding. So proud of these two. They deserve this recognition. Funny how some people only support you when it benefits them. Cassie, you're an amazing mom. Your kids are lucky to have you. And then? The cherry on top. Michael commented. Grammy is using this for attention. Typical. I stared at his name, blinking in disbelief. Michael, the same Michael who had laughed at me earlier tonight, was now turning against Mom because she had stolen the spotlight from his kids. Ryan let out a low chuckle. And just like that, the house of cards starts falling. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. This was only the beginning. My mother wanted to use my children to make herself look good. She had no idea who she was messing with. I set my phone down on the table, my pulse still racing from what I had just done. The weight of the moment settled over me. My post was out there. The truth laid bare for everyone to see. There was no taking it back now. And from the way the notifications kept rolling in, people were definitely paying attention. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't just a social media post. This was a shift, a crack in the foundation of the carefully curated image my mother had built for herself. But I didn't have time to revel in it. Not yet. Across the table, Ava and Liam were still lost in the excitement of their night, completely unaware of the online storm brewing around them. Liam was meticulously picking apart his dessert, examining the layers with the curiosity of a scientist. Mom, do you think we could make this at home? He asked, popping a chocolate curl into his mouth. I smiled, reaching over to tuck a stray hair behind his ear. We could try, I said. But I think Chef Ryan might have a few secret techniques we'd need to learn first. Ryan, who had been quietly watching me, leaned back in his chair with a knowing smirk. You know, he said casually, I do run weekend classes for kids. Maybe Ava and Liam could come by and learn some of those secret techniques themselves. Ava's eyes lit up. Really? She gasped. Liam practically bounced in his seat. Like real cooking classes? Ryan nodded. Absolutely. We don't just teach kids how to follow recipes. We teach them how to understand food, how to create their own dishes. He looked at me then, his voice turning serious. And more importantly, we give them a space where their creativity is celebrated. I didn't miss the subtext in his words. He knew exactly what tonight had meant for my kids, how much they had needed to feel wanted. I exhaled slowly, my chest tightening with emotion. I think they'd love that, I said softly. Before I could say more, my phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down. Mom. Of course. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. I could already picture the conversation, the guilt-tripping, the faux innocence, the inevitable gaslighting. But before I could decide whether to answer, another text popped up. Michael. I raised an eyebrow. Ryan must have caught my expression. Oh, he murmured. The family drama is officially reaching peak levels. I let out a humorless laugh and opened Michael's message. We need to talk. Now. I sighed, rolling my shoulders back. I had spent years letting Michael and Mom control the narrative, twisting reality into something that suited them. But this time I had receipts. I glanced at Ryan. Mind watching the kids for a minute? He gave me a reassuring nod. Take your time. We're just getting started on round 2 of desserts. Ava and Liam cheered as a waiter placed another plate in front of them. I stood, phone in hand, and stepped outside into the cool night air. The city hummed around me, car horns, distant laughter, the rhythmic click of heels against the pavement. I hit call, Michael answered immediately. What the hell, Cassie? I smirked. Nice to hear from you too, big brother. He ignored that. Mom is freaking out. She says you're making her look bad. I let out a sharp breath. Oh, I'm making her look bad? That's rich. Maybe she should have thought about that before telling me my kids weren't welcome at her party. You're blowing this out of proportion, Michael snapped. You know Mom didn't mean it like that. I clenched my jaw. No, Michael. The first know exactly how she meant it. And so do you. Silence. I waited, letting my words sink in, letting him feel the weight of what I had just said. Then, finally, he exhaled. Look, he said, his tone softer now. I get it, I do. But was it really necessary to air this all over social media? I barked out a laugh. You mean the same way Mom publicly claimed my kids after ignoring them all night? Yeah, Michael. It was necessary. Another pause, this one longer. Then, grudgingly, you know she's never gonna apologize, right? I closed my eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. I don't need her apology, I murmured. I just need her to know I'm done playing this game. Michael sighed again, heavier this time. She's not gonna let this go. I don't need her to, I said simply. She can live in her delusion. But me? I'm moving on. I could hear the tension in his breath, the resentment. Because Michael had never been able to do what I was doing. He had always needed Mom's approval, always bent over backward to stay in her good graces. The idea of me walking away, choosing something better, it probably terrified him. Good luck with that, he muttered. Then he hung up. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then let out a slow, steady breath. That was it. The last piece of the puzzle clicking into place. I wasn't just done with this one night. I was done chasing their acceptance. I turned, heading back inside, my shoulders a little lighter than before. As soon as I stepped through the doors, Ava and Liam rushed up to me, their faces glowing with excitement. Mom, Ryan said we can come back next weekend. I laughed, pulling them both into a hug. That sounds amazing, baby. Ryan walked over, his arms crossed. So, how'd it go? I smirked. Michael's spiraling. Mom's panicking. And I feel pretty damn good. Ryan chuckled. Told you. House of Cards. I exhaled, looking around the restaurant, this beautiful, welcoming place where my kids had been celebrated, where they had thrived. This was what mattered. Not my mother's approval. Not my brother's resentment. This. I turned to Ryan, my mind already racing. Hey, what if we made this a thing? He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I looked down at Ava and Liam, still glowing with pride. What if we started something bigger? A real program. For kids like mine. Kids who just need a space to shine. Ryan's grin spread slowly across his face. Now that's an idea, Ava gasped. Wait, could other kids come too? Liam nodded eagerly. Yeah, what if we taught them how to cook, like we did? I looked at them, my heart swelling. I think that sounds like a perfect plan. Ryan clapped his hands together. Well then, he said, looks like we have work to do. And just like that, the next chapter of our lives officially began. I sat back down at the table, my mind still buzzing from the conversation with Michael. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for years felt lighter, like I had finally let go of something I hadn't even realized I'd been holding on to. My mother's approval, Michael's condescension, the constant feeling that no matter what I did, I would never be enough in their eyes, it was all slipping away. And for the first time, I wasn't scrambling to hold on to it. I looked over at Ava and Liam, their faces still glowing with excitement as they finished their second round of desserts. They had no idea that their names had just become part of an online whirlwind. They had no idea that their grandmother, who hadn't wanted them at her party, was now trying to claim them as her pride and joy because people on the internet had decided they were worth celebrating. And, honestly, I wasn't sure they even needed to know. But I did. And I wasn't about to let my mother rewrite this story in her favor. Ryan was still sitting across from me, his arms crossed, studying me like he was trying to figure out exactly what was going on inside my head. So, he said, leaning forward, what's next? I let out a slow breath, pushing my phone aside. I don't know, I admitted. But I do know one thing: I'm not letting her turn this into a way to make herself look good. Ryan smirked. I had a feeling you'd say that. I took a sip of my wine, letting the warmth of it settle in my chest. Michael's already cracking. He knows she's full of it. The rest of the family will figure it out soon enough. Ryan tilted his head. And you? I exhaled. I think it's time I stopped caring what they think. For a long moment he just studied me, then he grinned. About damn time. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated again. Another message. This time? From my mother. We need to talk. Call me now. I stared at the screen, debating. Ryan must have seen my hesitation because he lifted an eyebrow. You gonna do it? I let out a humorless laugh. Oh, I'm definitely going to do it. But not because I owed her anything. Not because I wanted an apology. I was going to do it because I wanted to hear her squirm. I stood up, phone in hand. Watch the kids? Ryan gave me a mock salute. Of course. We'll be over here revolutionizing the culinary world one chocolate curl at a time. Ava giggled, and Liam gave me a thumbs up, his mouth full of pastry. I stepped outside into the cool night air and hit call. She picked up on the first ring. Cassie. Her voice was tight, clipped. What the hell do you think you're doing? I leaned against the brick wall of the restaurant, staring up at the city skyline. I could ask you the same thing, Mom. You're making a spectacle of yourself, she hissed. This post of yours is true? I interrupted. Silence. I could almost picture her, standing in her perfect dining room, gripping her phone like it was betraying her. Cassie, she said, her voice softer now. You're overreacting. I scoffed. No, Mom. What I did was react appropriately for once. What you did? That was exclusion. That was cruelty. She let out a sharp breath. Michael's upset. He says you're making him look bad. I laughed, shaking my head. Oh, so that's what this is really about? Not that you hurt your own grandkids, but that Michael is upset his aren't getting attention for once? You always take things so personally, she snapped. You know why I invited Michael's kids. They're well-behaved. They don't make a mess. They know how to sit at a dinner table without causing a scene. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. You know what, Mom? You don't deserve them. A pause. What? My kids, I said, my voice firm. You don't deserve to be their grandmother. You don't deserve to be in their lives. And after tonight, I don't think you ever will be again. The silence was deafening. Then, Cassie, don't be ridiculous. I smiled. Goodbye, Mom. And then I hung up. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at my phone, my breath coming fast. Then I took a deep, steady breath, and I walked back inside. The second I stepped through the doors, I was greeted with cheers. Ava and Liam were laughing, holding up their newly printed Cole's Bistro Junior Chef certificates, while Ryan snapped a photo of them. I smiled, feeling something settle deep in my chest. This was the family that mattered. And nothing, not my mother, not Michael, not the past, was ever going to take that away from me again. I walked back inside the restaurant, my pulse still thrumming from the call with my mother. The finality of it sat in my chest like a weight I wasn't sure how to process yet, but as soon as I saw Ava and Liam, their faces beaming with pride, all of that heaviness began to dissolve. This was what mattered. Not my mother's guilt, not Michael's anger, not the years of feeling like an outsider in my own family. The look on my children's faces, the warmth of a place where they were celebrated. This was the only thing worth holding on to. Ryan caught my eye as I approached the table, raising an eyebrow. Judging by the look on your face, I'm guessing that conversation didn't end in a group hug? I let out a dry laugh. Not exactly. Ava turned to me, bouncing excitedly in her chair. Mom, look! We got our official junior chef certificates. She held up a glossy piece of paper with Cole's Bistro Junior Chef printed in elegant gold lettering, her name right beneath it. Liam had one too, though his had a few smudges of chocolate on the edges. I took them from their hands, running my fingers over the embossed letters. "These are amazing," I said, my throat tightening. Liam puffed out his chest. "Ryan said we're part of the kitchen family now." Ryan grinned. "That's right. And next weekend they'll be helping me teach the other kids." I blinked. "Wait, other kids?" He nodded. "Yeah, we've been talking about launching a real kids' culinary program here for a while. But tonight, seeing how much these two loved it, it just clicked. So we're making it official. Weekend classes, real hands-on experience. And Ava and Liam," he smirked, "they're our first mentors." Liam gasped. "Like real chefs?" Ryan knelt down to his level. "Buddy, you are real chefs." Ava looked at me, eyes wide with excitement. "Can we do it, Mom? Please?" I looked between them, at the way they were practically vibrating with joy. My heart swelled. "Of course," I said. "You deserve this." Liam pumped his fist in the air. "Yes!" Ryan sat back down, crossing his arms. "Now that that's settled, want to tell me what happened outside?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "She's mad, obviously. Says I'm making a spectacle of myself." Ryan rolled his eyes. Classic deflection. "Michael's mad too," I added, "because for the first time ever, Mom's attention isn't on his kids." Ryan let out a low whistle. "Wow. You really hit the family drama jackpot tonight," I scoffed. "Tell me about it." He leaned in, his expression turning serious. "You okay?" I hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I actually am." For the first time in my life, I had set a boundary. I had stood my ground, and it didn't feel scary or uncertain. It felt good. I checked my phone again, scrolling through the flood of notifications. The restaurant's social media post about Ava and Liam was still blowing up, and now other parents were commenting, "How do we sign up for the kids' program? My son would love something like this. He's always felt out of place in other activities." It's amazing to see a restaurant actually value kids instead of treating them like an afterthought. I smiled to myself. This wasn't just about my kids anymore. It was about all kids, about creating a space where they were wanted. Ryan peeked over my shoulder. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" I nodded. "This could be huge." He grinned. "Then let's make it happen." I set my phone down, looking around the restaurant. At the staff who had welcomed my children without hesitation, at the customers who had cheered them on. This was what family should feel like, and I wasn't going to waste another second chasing after a version of it that had never really existed. I sat at the restaurant table, watching Ava and Liam as they enthusiastically discussed their upcoming weekend as junior chefs. Their energy was infectious, their little hands gesturing animatedly as they described all the ideas they had for new recipes. A month ago, I would have been worried about their excitement fading, about the possibility of my mother swooping in and stealing their joy, the moment she decided she wanted to play devoted grandmother again. But tonight, I wasn't worried, because I had finally taken control of the narrative. I glanced at my phone, still lighting up with notifications. The restaurant's post about the kids had gained even more traction. Not only were parents from all over the city asking about the culinary program, but local news outlets were reaching out now too. A reporter from Philadelphia Today had sent a direct message, asking if we'd be willing to do an interview about encouraging kids in the culinary arts. I couldn't help but chuckle. My kids had gone from being excluded from their own grandmother's birthday party to becoming the face of an entirely new movement, and my mother hated it. Ryan leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee, watching me with an amused expression. "You're enjoying this," he said. It wasn't a question. I shrugged, setting my phone down. "I won't lie. It's satisfying." "More than satisfying," he corrected. "Your kids are about to be the poster children for inclusivity and fine dining, and your mom has to sit there and watch it happen." I smirked. "Yeah, that part doesn't hurt." He laughed, but then his expression sobered. "You know she's not done, right?" I exhaled. Of course, I knew. My mother wasn't the type to let go without a fight. She had spent her entire life controlling how people saw her. There was no way she would allow her own daughter to expose her so publicly without trying to regain control. And sure enough, right on cue, my phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a voicemail. Ryan saw my expression shift. "Let me guess," he said dryly. I rolled my eyes. She finally decided to speak instead of sending cryptic messages. Do I even want to know? I hesitated, staring at the screen. Then curiosity got the best of me. I pressed play. At first, there was silence. Then my mother's voice came through, measured and deliberate. "Cassie." A pause. "I think we need to talk. Face to face." Another pause, as if she was waiting for me to respond, as if I could somehow hear her hesitation. "This has gotten out of hand," she continued, "and I think we both know that." I scoffed. Of course, she wanted to reframe the situation as something we had done wrong. "I understand that you are upset. Maybe I should have handled things differently. But Cassie, this isn't the way to fix it. Putting our family drama on public display? That's not who we are." I clenched my jaw. That's not who we are. As if I had been the one lying. As if I had been the one excluding her own grandchildren. "Let's meet tomorrow," she continued, her voice softening. "Just the two of us. We can talk this through like adults." The voicemail ended. I stared at my phone for a long moment, my emotions tangled in a mess of anger, resentment, and something I refused to name. Ryan studied my expression. "So, you gonna do it?" I let out a slow breath. "I don't know." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Seriously?" I frowned. I hesitated, trying to put my thoughts into words. Part of me knows exactly what this is. It's damage control. She doesn't care about making things right. She cares about fixing her image. Ryan nodded. "Yep. So again, why even entertain this?" I ran a hand through my hair. "Because a small, stupid part of me still wants to believe she's capable of change." Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Then let me ask you this. What's the best case scenario?" I blinked. "What?" He gestured. "If you go to this meeting, what's the absolute best outcome?" She apologizes. She suddenly decides to be a good grandmother. She swears she'll treat your kids differently from now on. I swallowed, looking away. Ryan softened. "Cassie, you already know how this ends," I sighed. "Yeah, but," he continued, "I also know you. And I know that you won't be able to move forward until you hear her say it out loud." I exhaled, staring at my phone again. He was right. I needed to hear it from her. I needed her to confirm what I already knew, that this wasn't about me or my kids, that it had never been about us. So I made my decision. I was going to meet her, but not for her, for me. And this time, I wasn't going in as the daughter desperate for her mother's approval. I was going in as the woman who had finally stopped chasing it. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, not because I was eager to see her, but because I needed time to ground myself, to remind myself why I was here, why I had agreed to this meeting in the first place. The air smelled like fresh coffee and pastries, but my stomach was too knotted to enjoy it. I found a quiet table in the corner, one that gave me a full view of the entrance, and ordered a black coffee, even though I wasn't sure I'd drink it. I wasn't here to reconcile. I wasn't here to fix anything. I was here for clarity, to hear my mother admit in her own words what I already knew in my heart. The door chimed, and there she was, Margaret Benson, every hair in place, her designer coat buttoned neatly, her pearl earrings glinting under the cafe lights. She carried herself with the same effortless grace she always had, like someone who had never once questioned whether she belonged. She spotted me and smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the carefully measured expression she used in social settings: polite, composed, unreadable. I could already tell this wasn't going to be a heartfelt conversation. She slid into the chair across from me, setting her purse down beside her. "Cassie," she said smoothly, as if we were just two old friends catching up, I'm glad you came. I didn't respond. I just watched her, waiting. A waiter approached, and she ordered a cappuccino, taking her time, as if we had all the hours in the world. I could feel my patience thinning already. Once we were alone again, she folded her hands neatly on the table. I think we should clear the air, she began. I tilted my head. You mean you want to clear the air? Because I'm perfectly clear on where we stand. Her lips pressed together briefly, but she recovered quickly. Cassie, I understand that you're upset. I understand that you felt hurt. Felt, past tense. As if this was some overreaction I had already moved on from. I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady. Just say it, Mom. Say why you really wanted me here. She sighed, exhaling through her nose. Cassie, this spectacle you've made online? I laughed, shaking my head. There it is, she frowned. There what is? The real reason you wanted to talk, I said, sitting back in my chair. Not because you feel bad, not because you regret what you did, but because you're embarrassed, she bristled. That's not fair. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? So you're not upset that people are talking? That people are seeing you for who you really are? Her fingers tightened slightly around her cup. You're making me sound like some kind of villain, Cassie. I laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. Mom, you lied to me. You told me it was an adults-only party while Michael's kids were sitting at your table. And now, suddenly, you want to play the victim? She sighed, shaking her head as if I was a child throwing a tantrum. I was trying to create an environment where everyone could enjoy themselves. You know how your children can be, Cassie. My blood ran cold. How they can be, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, but then she pressed on. Ava and Liam are wonderful children, of course they are, but they require a different kind of attention. I stared at her. Because Liam is energetic? Because Ava is thoughtful and reserved? She didn't answer. Or, I continued, my voice sharper now, because they don't fit the perfect little image you've curated for yourself? Her expression didn't change. I just wanted a pleasant evening, Cassie. That's all. I sat back, exhaling slowly. No, Mom. You wanted an evening where you didn't have to acknowledge my kids, where you didn't have to pretend that you see them as equals to Michael's. She flinched at that, but she didn't deny it. For a long moment, we just sat there. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. You don't get to claim them now. Not after everything. Not because people are suddenly praising them online. Not because it makes you look good. She pursed her lips. So that's it then? You're cutting me out of their lives? I let out a slow breath. I don't need to cut you out, Mom. You did that all by yourself. Silence. I watched as she picked up her spoon and stirred her cappuccino, though she hadn't taken a sip. For the first time, she looked unsure of herself. Not because she felt guilty, no, that wasn't who she was, but because she realized she was losing control, and she hated it. She set the spoon down and folded her hands again. Cassie, I think you're making a mistake. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Mom. For the first time ever, I think I'm making the right choice. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee behind. As I walked toward the door, she didn't call after me, and that told me everything I needed to know. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. The moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, I felt it, the release. The weight of my mother's expectations, the years of bending over backward to make her happy, the endless cycle of hoping she would see my kids as something more than an inconvenience. It was all gone. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with crisp evening air, and when I exhaled, it was like I was breathing out every ounce of doubt that had ever lived inside me. She wasn't going to change. She never had any intention of changing, and for the first time, I was okay with that. I wasn't leaving that conversation empty-handed. No, I had gotten exactly what I came for: confirmation. She had no remorse, no regrets, just irritation that she had been called out, that her carefully curated image was starting to crumble. She wasn't angry that she had hurt me, she was angry that people were watching. And if there was one thing I knew about my mother, it was that she hated looking like the villain. I checked my phone as I walked toward my car. More notifications. The restaurant's post about Ava and Liam had gone viral overnight, spreading far beyond our little corner of the internet. Parents from across the country were commenting, sharing stories about their own kids, how they had been left out of family gatherings, how they had felt different in spaces that should have felt like home. And the best part? It wasn't just strangers. My own extended family was watching, and they were talking. A text from my aunt. I had no idea this had been going on, Cassie. I'm sorry. Your kids deserve better. A message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Your mom's furious. She's saying you're turning the family against her. But honestly, I think she's just mad that no one's defending her this time. I smiled to myself, tucking my phone away. Let her be mad. Let her spin whatever story she needed to make herself feel like the victim. It didn't matter anymore, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing the role she had assigned me. I drove home feeling lighter, like I had shed something I should have let go of years ago. And when I walked through my front door, greeted by the sound of Ava and Liam's laughter echoing from the kitchen, I knew I had finally chosen the right family. They were standing at the counter, still wearing their little chef's jackets. Liam, balancing on a step stool, as he carefully piped whipped cream onto a dessert plate. Ava was instructing him, her hands moving animatedly as she explained the technique she had learned at Cole's Bistro. Ryan was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching them with amusement. I gotta say, he said, looking up at me, these two have natural talent. I smiled, setting my purse down. I think they just had the right mentor. Liam beamed. Mom, look at this. He held up the plate proudly. The whipped cream was slightly lopsided, but to him it was a masterpiece. I ruffled his hair. It's perfect. Ava tapped her fingers against the counter, looking thoughtful. Ryan, do you think we could make a dessert menu just for kids? Ryan raised an eyebrow. A whole menu? She nodded, her confidence unwavering. Yeah, a real one. Not just boring stuff like chicken tenders and mac and cheese, but actual food. Stuff kids would be proud to make themselves. Ryan whistled. I like the way you think, kid. Liam gasped. Oh, what if we had a kids' chef competition? Ryan and I exchanged a glance. Okay, Ryan said slowly. Now we're talking. Ava's eyes lit up. We could call it Junior Chef Night. Every month, kids could come in and show off their best dishes, and the winners get their recipes on the menu for a whole month. Liam bounced on his heels. And we can help judge. I laughed, shaking my head in disbelief. Are you guys secretly running this restaurant now? Ryan smirked. Hey, I'd let them. Their ideas are better than half the marketing plans I've paid for. I looked at my kids, their faces glowing with excitement, their hands already moving as they started brainstorming ideas for their new culinary empire. My heart swelled. They weren't just included now. They were thriving. This wasn't just about food. It was about finding where they belonged. And my mother, my brother, they had missed it. They had chosen to miss it. Their loss. I helped the kids clean up, and after we tucked them into bed, I joined Ryan on the back porch. The night was quiet, the stars stretching out over the city, and for the first time in weeks, I felt settled, like I had finally put down something heavy I had been carrying for too long. Ryan nudged my arm. So, no regrets? I exhaled, watching the breath curl in the night air. Not a single one, he nodded. Good, because I gotta say, I've never seen you this at peace. I smiled to myself. Maybe because, for the first time, I'm not waiting for approval that was never coming. Ryan chuckled. And yet somehow you still won. I tilted my head. What do you mean? He gestured toward the house, where Ava and Liam were fast asleep, dreaming about the future they were already starting to build. You didn't just walk away, he said. You built something better. I thought about that for a moment, and he was right. I hadn't just removed myself from my mother's toxic cycle. I had created something new. Ava and Liam were already making plans for their next culinary adventure. Cole's Bistro was getting flooded with messages from parents asking how their kids could get involved. People were reaching out, real people who saw my kids for who they truly were, not who they were expected to be. And my mother? She could keep her perfect little dinner parties, her carefully curated guest lists, her need for everything to look a certain way. Because at the end of the day, she had lost something far greater than the approval of strangers on the internet. She had lost us. I leaned back, staring at the sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. I wasn't the daughter who wasn't good enough. I wasn't the sister who was supposed to fall in line. I wasn't the woman who needed to prove her worth to people who would never see it. I was Cassie Benson, a mother, a woman who had built something real, a woman who had walked away from the past and stepped into something new, and I wasn't looking back. So in the end, my mother lost the very thing she had always taken for granted: control. She wanted to exclude my kids, but instead, the whole world saw their worth. And now, she has to sit back and watch as they shine without her. No more waiting for approval. No more bending over backward for people who don't appreciate us. If you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, let me tell you this: you don't need their table, build your own. And if you've ever walked away from toxic family drama and come out stronger, drop a like in the comments. Let's share our wins together. In life, we're often taught to chase acceptance, to bend, shrink, and mold ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for us. But here's the truth: you don't need validation from people who refuse to see your worth. Family isn't just blood, it's the people who celebrate you, who lift you up, who make room for you at the table. When someone shows you they don't value you, believe them. Walk away. Build your own space and thrive. Because real belonging isn't about forcing yourself to fit. It's about creating a place where you never have to.